Hello and welcome to the Quakes Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, what are we going to look at? We are going to look at the new Arranger in the MPC 3.0. It's a work in progress. Is it any good? What's the point of it? Does it hinder your workflow? Does it enhance your workflow? Let's have a look. I'm going to show you how I use it. I'm going to show you what I've discovered so far. And there's a couple of things I'm not massively keen on. There's some improvements I'd love to see made. And yeah, let's take a look. Let's jump in. Okay, so I've got a project loaded up in the MPC. Okay, so there you go. It's a 2-bar sequence. I've just made it into 8 bars. Quickly, before I jump into the Arranger, I've had a couple of people ask this question. They've said that sometimes in the main window, they won't have this waveform and they just can't work out how to get it back. Well, it's quite simple, really. If you hit a pad that there isn't a sample one, you're not going to have the sample one. It's glaringly obvious, but it can be super frustrating if you just can't work it out. So I hope that helps somebody. So anyway, let's jump into the Arranger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I use it. I'm going to tell you what I think it's for, how it helps me, some of the things I don't really like about it, and just, you know, kind of have a bit of a dive into it. Hopefully I'm going to show people some things they might not have noticed already themselves, or I'll clarify some things, or I might do some things completely wrong, and then you can all laugh about it in the comment section. So, main window, let's jump into the Arranger window. Now, the way I think of the Arranger window as an overview window, a window where I can look at my whole project and see where things are, see where I've taken certain bars out, see where I might want to progress, see where I might want to add some things. So that's how I think of it. When I first saw it, I thought that we were going to be able to touch audio tracks, for instance, and move them around, or touch notes and move them around. I thought we were going to be able to do that. That would have been amazing. We can't do that yet. Maybe it's something that we will be able to do, but it really is at the moment, to me, a good way of an overview, but that's kind of it. It looks nice. It's a nice, big, pretty overview. The real editing goes on in the grid section, same as it always used to in the MPC. And I love this fact. I love this fact that you've got the overview, you hit the grid, you can have that whatever size you want. You can also access the grid here if you want to go into more detail, and you can access the MIDI list here. There won't be anything because it's an audio track. So that's how I kind of think of it. I think of it as an overview, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just kind of feel like there's a lot of hype attached to it so far. So people are like, wow, what's this Arranger? And then when they actually get their hands on the Arranger, they're kind of like, well, what does it really do? Because it doesn't really do anything. If I want to edit, I kind of just have to go into grid, which is what I had already. But let's think of it this way. Let's think of it in a positive way. It's a great overview for your project. When you want to do your editing, you can go into grid. Let's just pick a drum group as well, so you can see. So that's how I think of it. And it does look cool as well. We like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through the things that I've discovered on it so far, and some of the little shortcuts, some of the quick ways. Now, nothing in here really is anything that wasn't already available in the previous firmware. What they've done in the Arranger window is they've put a lot of it in one place so that you can access it quickly. And that's kind of how you should think of it. Don't think of it as being this massive, brand new, amazing thing that's added, that's made your machine a new machine. You know, what it really is they've just really tidied up the things that were already available and added a few more little functions, and they've made it look really cool. And it does speed up your workflow. Once you embrace it and you think of it as an overview and a quick way to access the grid and your track and flick through your tracks and being able to change the colors and all that kind of stuff, think of it that way. Think of it as your main hub, your point where you can zoom out and look down on what you're doing, and you have a good overview, I guess would be the best way to describe it, of what you're doing. So let's go through the functions on there just sort of quickly. I'm not going to go into too much detail because firstly, it will take ages. And secondly, I just think it's going to be better if people find their own way, find their own uses. Because if I was to bombard you with everything that you can do with the Arranger window and all the different functions and everything, there's probably a load of stuff in there which you're never going to use, so it's pointless. So, the best thing to do, the way that I've always worked, not best. Let's forget best. I don't like that whole best thing. What's best? Because obviously best is subjective. My way of working has always been I learn the things that I need to know and I just disregard the things that I don't need to know. I just find that my brain can only store a certain amount of stuff at once. So there's no point in filling it up with completely useless information. So let's run through it really, really quickly. Okay, so down the side here, obviously you've got your tracks. If you hold the track, you have a series of options. They're different depending on whether it's a key group or plugin or an audio track, etc. For a drum group, you can do these things here. You can go copy track, copy events, double speed, etc. Really, really useful. The bounce to sample thing I found really useful being available in this window. Again, it's about having everything in one window. If we go to an audio track, you have slightly different options. The flatten track and flatten track elastic, very, very useful. Again, you can copy events, that kind of thing. Again, a lot of these things are probably things that you would do in the grid editor. Flatten track elastic, what's the difference? The elastic is an algorithm that's been available in software for a long time. I think it's made by Z-Plane. They've been refining it over the years. For me, it's probably one of the best algorithms for warped audio, time-stretched audio. So if you flatten track with elastic, I'm assuming Akai have got together with Z-Plane. I think it is Z-Plane. They now have the elastic algorithm. So when you bounce any audio that you've got that's got any time stretching or warping, etc. on it, it will bounce with a much higher quality algorithm. I haven't used it, haven't compared it between flatten track and flatten track elastic. I would imagine that it probably takes a little bit longer to bounce, but I would imagine... I know the elastic algorithm, and I know that it's very, very good for time stretched audio. So that you can access in the audio if you hold your finger down on it. That's another drum group. Yeah, the rest of them are drum groups. Okay, so if you double tap, it takes you into the track settings. There we go. Same again there. Double track takes you into track settings. If you double track out here, it takes you into the grid, so that's useful. Rather than if you don't want to do that, I mean, there's different ways to do it. Again, go into there. There we go. Brilliant. Love that. Obviously, you can add a new track there. That's really cool. Easy to do. Same as on the main window where you can pick what track you want to add. So that's useful having it in there. It just saves you jumping in and out. As I said, think of the Arranger as a good as your kind of hub, as your place where you overview everything. You're going to get used to the fact that that's probably going to be where you do most of your work. Once you've done the main elements of your track, this is where you're going to start building things. So I always build a track up as one long sequence. What I sometimes do, for instance, is I might have a sequence which has got the main elements. That's just the 4 bars. And then when I actually want to build the track, I will work on a main sequence. That's just how I do things. Let's go back into the Arranger window. So we've been through the track. Something else I just want to point out as well, which is really cool. When you go into, actually, let's go into a drum group. If you zoom in on here, you can pick these. Is it double click or hold your finger on it? I can't remember. Ah, there you go. Hold your finger on it. It brings up mute, solo, and color. Okay, now I think this is really useful because one of the things that I didn't like about the Arranger window was that when I was playing a track, I couldn't mute. So I've got this Arranger window, and if you're working on a DAW, you normally can solo or mute when you're looking at your main window. I couldn't work out a way to quickly do this. I wanted to be able to go on here and just mute. I thought maybe there'd be a button down here pressing mute or solo. That would be a great thing to add, by the way, Akai. So I go on this track and I'm thinking, oh, how do I mute? So now you can actually double tap on it and go into the pads that you're using, wherever they may be. It will come up on here, hold it down and you get mute, solo, and you can change the color as well. So that's handy to know. And just another little quick access thing that you can have from the Arranger window. I'm imagining that Akai are going to build this up so that pretty much you will bounce between the main and the Arranger, and that's where you do everything. And I'm thinking that perhaps in the future, new MPC hardware might just have an Arranger button on there that you can go into. This is something I'm speculating about, obviously. So along the top here, you have the Arranger. You can go into a full window grid, or you can go into a full window MIDI list. This is really useful, I find, if I want to maybe just slightly move something. It doesn't have any access there, so you can nudge it slightly if you want to add a little bit of swing, or you want to change where a note is slightly doesn't quite sit right for you. So that's handy to be able to do that from there. It saves you, selecting it on the grid and then nudging it. There's multiple ways that you can do things. Yeah, all those are standard. That's where they used to be on grid. On the Arranger window, I believe if you hold down Shift, yeah, it's got your location settings. So along the top here, again, after list, so you've got your read and write automation. You can click that on really, really quickly. Double tap on that. You can change the speed if you want to do that. Double tap on the bars. You can change that. Yeah. Double tap on this one. It brings up the locator window, etc., where you can set that. You can set where your locators are using the playhead. Really, really useful. I like that. And you can access them along the bottom. So I could set a locator there. Let's set that to number 1. There we go, locator 1. If I go back into here, it's there, locator 1. Don't want that anymore, goodbye. So that's really useful. TC, standard time correcting window. Again, that was something that you could access from the main screen, but now you can access from the Arranger as well. Buses, this is going to show any automation that you might add on your subs or your returns, etc. So that's a quick way to get into that. Carrying along the top here, so this edit window, this is the same window that comes up if you're in the main window and you go to sequence here. So here you can do your main sequence edits, whether that be double length. That's the one I probably use the most. Copy sequence, copy bars, etc. That's really, really useful to have that in the Arranger window so you don't have to keep jumping out. And in the settings here, these are just the grid settings. Again, these are things that you're probably not going to touch too often, but it's handy to have them available. The absolute and the relative is actually quite useful within the snap mode. So that's a basic outline of the top, the sides, and these along the bottom. These two buttons here, okay, so we'll get to loop in a second. MIDI record arrays, it's actually quite useful. If you want to, for instance, just want to record in this bar, okay, so the way that I would do it, and there are other ways to do it, is I would set the loop. This is where I want to record. If I've got MIDI record arrays on there, it will record over the top of what I've already got there. If I turn it off, it's going to merge. It's going to basically, you've got replace or you've got merge. To keep it off, I can now add things. It's not going to delete what's already there. But MIDI record arrays will delete what's there if I want to do that. Personally, I don't, maybe I'll work it into my workflow, but at the moment I don't really use it just because of the way my workflow is. Sorry. Let's get to the loop now. The loop thing across the top there is really, really useful. Now, to start with, when you've just got 8 bars and you've got an overview, it's kind of useful. Not massively useful, because you're going to be working, when you're working on small spaces or small sequences of 4 bars, 8 bars, etc., you're not really going to be using it too much. But let's say you've got 64 bar track or 128, or some house tracks I've made can be 248 bars. This is where it comes in useful. If I want to home in on certain regions, let's just say that I'm on bar 100 now and I want to focus in, I can change the area that I want to work on, because when you change the loop and you have loop switched on, the loop window will always show, by the way, on here, but it won't be, if you don't have it turned on. You can still see it when it's not turned on, but when you turn it on, obviously it's highlighted. When you press play start, it starts from where you've got the loop. Again, this is really, really useful because, and I love this feature, because if I'm working through a track and I want to change things slightly, quite often, one of the things that I would do when I have, like, let's say, for instance, excuse me, I don't know, 200 bar house track, just to give the drums a little bit of movement, I will go through the track and play live, maybe some snare drums, add some drum rolls, add some little additional parts, so that it doesn't just sound like I've copied and pasted 4 bars all the way through for 200 bars. And the way that, I kind of it's almost like a live recording, I suppose, is where I think of it. So when I want to go through that later on to tighten things up, to make sure it's all in the right place, or I want to swing it slightly, what's nice now is that I can just move this along, go through the track, I can focus in wherever I want to focus, and whenever I press play start, it's going to go from there. Just pressing play is going to start from where the playhead is, that loop sequence, in that loop area rather. So that's really, really useful, and I like the sort of tactile side of being able to do that. And like I said, at the moment on 8 bars, it doesn't really seem, you know, you're not really going to use it that much probably. But when you've got 32, 64 plus, etc., then I think that you're going to find that you actually use this loop section and being able to play start, etc., from the beginning of the loop section. I think you're going to find that you use that a lot more. So there you have it. That was a pretty quick, or the quickest I could be anyway, of going through how I view the Arranger window, how I will be using it going forward. Some of the things I'm not massively keen on. There isn't actually a lot that I'm not massively keen on. I think that the major thing is that when I first saw the idea of it, I thought it would be a little bit more hands-on, and when I'm in the Arranger window, I'd be able to tap on things on the touchscreen and move them around. So you can't do that yet. That was the major thing that I thought it was going to be about, and it wasn't, so I was wrong. Maybe that's something that Akai will do in the future, but you can't do it at the moment. You still have to go into grid edit. So really, I mean, this is going to sound brutal. I don't want it to sound brutal, because I do like the Arranger window. I like the way that it looks, and I like the fact that it's an overview thing, and I like the fact that you can access everything in one window. But really, ultimately, it's just a kind of pretty overview. That's all it really is, because all of the things that you can do in it, we could already do in the previous firmware. It's just now that it's all in one window and you can just access it in one place. So, like I said, I don't want that to sound brutal or harsh, because I like where it's going. And I think that Akai are going to build on that, and there's going to be more things that you can do in it, and maybe the touch thing where you can move things around. But yeah, it looks great, and it's the Arranger window. And I think that's why I've seen quite a few people on forums have just kind of said, well, what's the point? I don't understand Arranger, because there was so much hype to it. I think lots of people were expecting this new Arranger function on the MPC would be this new way of everything. It would just be amazing. You'd be able to, you know, move chunks around just by moving your finger and build up tracks that way. And it would be the same as if you were using a mouse and you were on Ableton and you were just building blocks up, etc. And, you know, maybe it will be like that in the future. Maybe this is the start of where it's going to go. But yes, at the moment, it's just kind of like a good overview, and it's a good place to build from. It's a good place where you can just have everything in one page, get to everything pretty quickly. And I'm gradually working it into my workflow. I've got to be honest, when I first installed 3.0, I went to the Arranger page and I just thought, well, you know, I can just do everything I want to do in grid. You know, what's the point? Doesn't really, you know, oh, okay, it looks cool. Looks a bit like a door. Wow. But now I'm starting to see the advantages of it. Now I've worked it into my workflow, and I've stopped being that stick in the mud where I don't like change, and I'm working it in, and I'm seeing the advantages of it. And definitely the biggest advantages I think I'm seeing to it are when you're working on a whole track. You've got a sequence that's 100 bars, 200 bars long, etc. Then it's going to be really, really useful to be able to see everything in the same place and be able to get a good overview of how the track is looking, you know, because, you know, after working on tracks for many, many years on a computer screen, building them up, I can look at a track just from experience and look at it and just be like, yeah, okay, that's where the first breakdown is. That's where the second breakdown is. I can see that I need to add that there. I can see that I need to add that there. I'm simulating that I'm looking at a screen, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing. And you couldn't really do that in the MPC previous firmware because it was difficult to get an idea of the whole picture. For me, it was anyway. The Arranger window, now I'm starting to see the purpose of it and starting to see the advantages of being able to see the whole track laid out the same way that I would have in a DAW. So that's the biggest advantage of it, I think. And I just think that, yeah, I think a lot of people felt a little bit let down because they thought Arranger was going to be this massive new thing with loads of new functions. And it isn't really, because most of the functions were actually already there in previous firmwares. So thanks ever so much for watching. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.